What is the place of women in Islam, and what are their rights? Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Youth Talk. I would like to welcome my guest in the studio. I have with me Sheikh Assim Al-Hakeem. It's a pleasure having you with us, Sheikh Assim.
Pleasure is all mine.
I would also like to welcome my three participants. I have with me Osama, as well as Mahmoud and Muhammad. Let's start off, Sheikh Assim, by asking a very simple question. What is the value or the place of women in Islam?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillahi wa alihi wa sahbihi wa man ihtada bihudah. This question usually arises when we talk about women generally and in Islam particularly, because people tend to make this an issue, that they would have lots of hidden agendas coming out of it. A woman's place in Islam is a very important one, and it's logical before it is Islamic, because they constitute half of our society. They are the mother, the wife, the sister, and the daughter. So men are surrounded with women, and women are surrounded with men. So it is essential for us to know the rights of everyone, so one could be on a clear road and path while living with each other. Islam gave women their rights centuries ago, and this issue comes to the surface nowadays by people who themselves were only recently fighting with each other whether a female has a soul or not. It's almost 150 years in Europe that the discussion was heated up to say and acknowledge that females, women, do not have souls. Only recently they have come to the point that, yes, they have souls, they're human beings, and they have their rights. And so before that, in Europe and elsewhere, in the medieval ages, women had no rights at all. Islam, 15 centuries ago, came to an environment where women were inherited. So if a man dies, his son is, by default, inherits his wife, his mother-in-law. She becomes his property. In countries like India and so on, if a man dies, his wife is cremated with him. And this is still practiced in some states in India and so on. This practice was completely stopped when Islam came to give the woman its honor and its rights.
Okay, I think we'll start off with Mahmoud, for example. Maybe there was something else.
Yes, I agree with this viewpoint, as I read that the Indian and the European culture in the Middle Ages and what followed it, they would estimate the woman as something like a property of a man, and if he died, this property was entitled to another person. But Islam is giving the woman all over its legacy and its history, the all rights that the West never gave her.
To start with, yes.
Yeah.
What is the role of women in Islam? Let's start off maybe with the talk about the role of a woman. Is there a certain role that women should play in an Islamic society, or according to Islam?
a woman is like a man.
Yes.
They share the same role in the society. They are addressed both with the same legislations, rules, instructions, orders of Allah Azza wa Jal. They all have to pray, fast, perform zakah, give zakah, perform umrah and hajj. They all have to be kind to their neighbors, to their parents, to the next of kin. They all have to stay away from sin, not to fornicate, not to steal, not to do this and that. In that sense, they are all equal. The role of a woman is determined on her position. So if she's a daughter, she has to be a good daughter to her parents. She has to obey them. She has to care for them as the Quran instructs us to do. If she is a wife, she has to be good and kind to her husband. If she's a mother, she has to bring up her children in an Islamic way, to be kind of them, to be loving and caring, and so on. So it depends on her
position.
role. Yes.
Muhammad?
I want to ask about the rule for the female to choose her husband.
Okay.
Is that a right? I mean, does the
Right,
female
or-
in Islam
yes,
have the
yes.
right to choose her husband? Or is she subordinated to her father? He is the one to choose.
Allah Azza wa Jal describes the Muslim nation as being a nation of the middle, which is not to the extreme. In some countries, you find women to be liberal, in the sense that if a woman or if a girl is 15 or 16 years old, she has all the right to leave her parents' house and go and move on to live with her boyfriend, or go and just leave. And in some cases, the parents kick the children out of the house and tell them, you go and support yourself. So no matter what they do, if they indulge in drugs, if they go into prostitution, if they kill, steal, it's not our job. We raised you until you were 14, 15, and then you're on your own. So in such societies, a girl has the right to choose whatever she wants to do, even if she makes the wrong choice, even if she wants to become a homosexual, a tetrasexual, or whatever. It's her right. She can do whatever she pleases her. On the other extreme, there are countries and societies that impose the choice of the father and the mother on their child. So the child has no
Say whatsoever.
no decision. She has to marry this man, regardless of his age, his religion, his social status. This is not your problem. You have to marry him. It's a must. Islam is a way in between. Marriage cannot take place without the consent of two: the girl herself and the guardian. And the guardian usually is the father.
Yes.
But if the father is not there, then the
Grandfather.
brother or the son or the uncle, depending. And why is that? Simply because girls are emotional by nature. So anyone could, sweet talk her into getting married to her, and then she would find out that he was not suitable. So if she accepts someone, her guardian, the father, has to approve it. Otherwise, the contract is invalid. I know that in some countries, they claim to follow some school of thought that gives the woman right to marry herself. And this is wrong. And this has been proven wrong in so many Islamic countries, and also in the West, where the girl objects to her father's choice and decides to marry herself to that man, and after a week or two discovers that he was not the right one, and then she is in a whole lot of problems and trouble trying to get rid of this marriage, and is unable to do so. And at the same time, she lost her family because she went out of their decision and decided to marry this man on her own. Islam tells you to have a proper marriage contract. You have to have the consent of the guardian. You have to have the consent of the girl. You have to have two witnesses, and you have to have a dowry for the wife or the girl.
Excuse me, why it's important to guardians approve?
Again, it is important because girls usually do not have the
Full
not the sanity,
insight or
yes,
but
they
towards a person?
have
The experience.
the experience and the wise decision to determine if this person is suitable or not.
But sometimes guardians depend on personal troubles or something like that.
Okay, that's true, and that is why the consent of the girl is also
Important.
a
Is
must.
also there as well.
So,
So
if,
much.
for example, if the father says to his daughter, "I want you to marry this gentleman," and she says, "No, he's older than I am. I don't like him. He's rich, but he's not religious." He says, "I insist." She has all the right to say, "I refuse."
He cannot force her.
He cannot force her. But,
Okay.
but, if a woman finds a suitable husband who is pious, religious, rich, handsome, this usually is in paradise, but let's assume that he exists.
Assume he's on earth, yes.
With a white horse, preferably.
Knight.
If he comes and the father insists on not
To refuse him.
he refuses
Yes.
him, then the girl has all the right to go
choose
to
him.
the judge, to the Islamic judge, in a courtyard, and she complains to this, and the judge brings the father and interrogates him. Why do you refuse this man? If he does not give justifiable reasons, the judge has all the right to override the guardian's decision, and he gives this man to, or gives this girl to this man.
Okay. Osama?
Yeah, I think if we have, for example, the role of women in archaic ages, like I'll take for example Asma bint Abi Bakr, which applies Prophet Muhammad and her father in the cave, far away in a remote cave in the mountain. I think if we compare that with today's contemporary society women, how far the gap is, you know. In the past eras, women were really women, you know what I mean, like men, yeah. And nowadays they are more indulgent, spoiled, you know, welfare life. If we could compare between the archaic period women like Asma bint Abi Bakr and what is the analogous or the one who like her these days, just a small comment, if you please.
If I were to be a woman, I would say, well, before you start comparing us to Asma bint Abi Bakr, compare yourself to the companions.
Yeah.
So it's two shades. it's the same thing. Now, it's a different generation.
Different.
Those
Completely.
had the crystal clear idol to follow next to them, the Prophet ﷺ.
Yes, sir.
They had him coming in their houses,
He was
eating
there.
with them. He was
That's
there.
enough.
It's easy for you to hear his instructions. And they had all the means to do this, but they were more feminine than our females
Yeah.
nowadays.
Actually, I'm concerned about the bringing up, the way they brought up, you know what I mean? Different from these days.
Well, this is easy if you look at a child that was brought up in that era. But we're talking about females that reverted to Islam, that have been non-Muslims for 30 or 40 years, and then they've accepted Islam. Yet they were transformed 180 degrees, totally. So it's not the upbringing only, it's the belief of being a good Muslim. Women at the time of the Prophet ﷺ had a very strong belief.
Yeah.
And it would be very unfair for us to generalize and say that nowadays our women are more likely to be men than women. There is
Some of them, yeah.
some truth to that, but there are lots of women in nowadays times that are extremely excellent examples that have been, but usually, unfortunately that is, and fortunately at the same time, women that set the best examples are in the shade because they are in their houses. They're not exposed to the media. Those who expose...
And they're
yes.
they're a minority.
Those who are exposed to the media are usually the worst examples.
Okay, we'll take a report now and be back after it.
I think that under Islam, women have as many rights as do other religions and cultures, and I think that that's important to realize, and I think many people around the world are trying to focus on this now as an issue and try to bring that sort of recognition to the table where hopefully we can, as a global society, try to increase the rights of women under Islam.
Islam gave women a lot of rights that were previously in non-Islamic times not a given. She has the right to own property. She has the right to engage in business. And
I think the best way to correct an image about a certain topic in Islam is by giving positive examples in the community, by showing the positive attitudes of women in Islam and their contributions to the society. And this creates a good example for other Muslims and non-Muslims to follow. Instead of talking theoretically, by giving models in the community about successful women, this will have a stronger impact on the audience and on the community in general.
Welcome back. Sheikh Assim, just a point I wanted to touch upon. Some people who look at Islam from the outside, who are non-Muslims, for example, or Western countries, be it whatever, tend to say or believe that females in a Muslim society are subordinate, are at a second level to men. Be it in the home, for example, that with their relationship with their husband, that they should follow the orders of their husband, that makes them less, for example, or in society at large. Could you correct that if I'm mistaken?
No, I can't. See, no matter how you try your best to counterattack these allegations, you'll end up doing nothing because it keeps on going and going and going. Their critique is not for the welfare of women. It's for their own welfare. This can be answered by the women themselves. I could sit here for eternity telling you that everything is fine, we're okay, women are happy, but I'm not their spokesman. You have to ask women this question. And to tell you the truth, there is a difference between a man and a woman. They're not equal in the sense of that a man and his wife are equal. She can do whatever she wants by leaving the house, working without...
But she does have a say.
Definitely. This is not life. If you have a wife in your house without any say, this is a slave and not a wife. She has a say as we citizens have a say in what our rulers do. But our say does not mean at the end of the day it's going to be implemented. It's just an opinion.
But is there a sense between, for example, the husband and the wife where there's a consultation, for example, with his wife, or that she can have certain decisions to do with certain issues?
The problem is that the West looks at the problem without coming to the roots of it. To be able to imagine what's happening, you have to go into a Muslim's house and interview the girls, interview the women, and you have to be a woman, of course, because a man interviewing, this is unacceptable. But
yes,
this takes place. I know a lot of women, and I have daughters, I have wives, I have a mother, I have a sister, I have aunts, and so on. And we talk, and they complain, but never they have complained about Islam because they're believers. They know what their religion tells them to do, and they know what the things they're not allowed to do. So, in this sense, yes, men as husbands or men as fathers have the upper hand over their wives and daughters. But women as mothers have the upper hand over their sons. So it goes here and there. Now, she is controlled when she's a wife or a daughter. But she is controlling when she is a mother. And a son cannot go out of his mother's will if she wants something else. He has to do it. This is Allah's given right to mothers. So it's not only one-way road, it's two-way.
It's a two-way road.
And I always give this as an example. Marriage is a boat. If you have two captains, the boat will sink. Because if I say up, you say down. If I say right, you say left. And this would not go on. There has to be one captain, and there has to be a crew. And the crew has all the right to say, Captain, with all due respect, you're going in the wrong direction. The captain says, none of your business. This is what I'm going to do. And at the end of the day, if something wrong happens, the crew has all the right to say, ha ha, I warned
You were the
you.
wrong
And the
captain. Now you've
captain
got
will
a
have the
son.
responsibility.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, Muhammad.
Is it right for the woman to choose their job?
Is it right for a woman
For
to
women to choose their job? For
have a job,
Yes.
for example? Well, okay, so
not have a job.
let's tackle it first from to
okay.
have a job, because I think Sheikh Assim will comment on that.
Well, see, to choose a job, this means that she has lots of jobs to choose from. But this is not a problem. The problem is she allowed to work? The answer would be depending on
situation?
the situation of her occupation. So if she wants to work as a belly dancer, then this is work.
Not like that.
It's
This
art,
is
yeah.
see. Then okay, as long as you refuse this, this means that there is a level that you will not accept. True?
Yes.
Okay. Now, as Muslims, we have to know what is the level. Who draws the line? Is it me and you?
No.
Is it society? Or is it the Quran and Sunnah?
Quran and Sunnah.
Alhamdulillah. Then, from here, we can easily go on and move forward by saying, a belly dancer is not acceptable. An actress is not acceptable.
Maybe.
Why?
So actress, sometimes they are acting for a purpose.
I mean, religious episodes and something,
Yes.
you know.
Okay, a belly dancer dances for a purpose.
Not,
but what she's
It conveys
something
what
what
else.
she's doing is different.
Yes, something else.
Okay.
You know.
I exactly understand where you're coming from. Coming back to the red line.
Okay.
Who draws the red line?
Quran and Sunnah.
and Sunnah. Does the actress work involve working with the opposite sex? Men? It has to be actors, right?
Yes.
There has to be a director, with all due respect to the director.
Yes, yes.
There has to be sound engineers. There has to be other men. So this mixing in Islam is forbidden. Mixing with the opposite sex. I cannot work with a woman because Islam tells me you have to put a partition. Allah Azza wa Jal. And I don't want to go into, but I think
Yes,
it's
yes.
helpful. It's good to clarify a few things. Allah Azza wa Jal tells the companions, such as Abu Bakr, Umar, Uthman, Ali, whenever they want to ask something from the wives of the Prophet house, who are their mothers, huh?
Yes.
The wives of the prophets, the wives of the Prophet are
Yes.
the mothers of the believers.
Believers.
So Allah tells them, whenever you want to ask something from the wives of the Prophet, ask it from beyond a partition. And Allah gives us the justification. This is Surah Al-Ahzab. Allah tells us that the reason, because this is purer and cleaner to your hearts and to their hearts. Whose hearts is Allah Azza wa Jal talking about? The hearts of the companions and the hearts of the mothers of the believers, the wives of the Prophet. Allah is telling them to communicate beyond from behind a
a
partition.
curtain or a partition or something.
Why? Because the cleanliness of your hearts. Now, nowadays, if an actress works with an actor, whose heart is in need of this cleanliness? Ours or the companions, for God's sake? Definitely our hearts are more corrupt, are more polluted and weak. Therefore, the mixing of the opposite sexes is forbidden in Islam, which leads us to the point that actresses is not acceptable. We come back to any other form of work. Okay, what about I'm an accountant and she's an accountant and we're sharing the same office and the same desk. Again, this leads to a lot of problems. In prayer, Allah tells us, the Prophet tells us that the worst row of the congregation of men is at the very end. And the worst row of the congregation of females and women are the very beginning. And the best are the very beginning for the men and the very end of women, which means stay as far
Distance.
as possible. If wearing perfume for a woman is forbidden and is a major sin, if touching and shaking hands a man to a woman is forbidden and is a major sin,
What about
then
shaking hands in gloves or something like?
it's again
Same,
same thing,
right? Yeah.
same thing, because the glove does not prevent you from, or does not allow you to
Sensation
do
was still,
something.
yeah.
You cannot touch her face with a glove or
course.
touch her whatever with a glove, because it's the same gravity
Yeah.
of sin is there. This means, and this leads us to the point is that a woman may work, but you have to provide her with a proper working environment. That is, she has to be far away from men. She can work in a hospital that is
hospital is-
completely
Patients.
for females.
That's hard.
Patients
For
may have
females.
That's hard.
Okay.
It's
How can you come
applicable
with
in
one
so
like
hard.
this? You know what I mean?
So
Everyday life.
Okay, I think I'm going to say this, and you have to contemplate a little bit onto it. Islam is a religion
Yeah.
that is a frame, and our life is a photograph. The proper thing is to come and apply Islam by putting the frame on our life and
Cutting the
whatever
edges out.
the edges. Now, what you guys are trying to convince me of
Is to
is
make the-
trying to
Make the frame a bit
little
bigger.
here or there.
Okay, we'll take a quick break now and then we continue after the break. Welcome back. Sheikh Assim, you were mentioning just a few moments ago about the red line in terms of jobs for women, or what to work or what not to work. Do women work when there is a certain necessity? I mean, are there certain reasons why women should work? And
Okay. Originally, men are the one who should work, who should do all the work. And that is why Allah Azza wa Jal had gave the men an edge over women, because of what they support and sponsor their women with. So they should, even if in Islam, and this is one of the things why men are asking for their rights nowadays. We nowadays are asking for our rights. It's not the women asking for their rights. In Islam, even if my wife is a multi-billionaire, she is not obliged to pay one single cent to support the family or to support their house. It's my problem. Even if I have a very low income, it's not her problem. She's not asked to pay anything, though she's well off. It is my responsibility to sponsor my wife. So, generally speaking, the men are the ones who are supposed to do all the work. Women's place is in her house to care and cater for her husband and her children. If there is a necessity, or if there's a need, or if she wants to fill up her time, she has access time, and she wants to utilize it, she may work, but she has to work with or under the conditions that Islam allows her to do so.
okay, Osama, is there any of the other rights that you want to talk about?
Yeah, what about the, like if women have the right to vote in policy life or something? Is that possible?
Is that's a political aspect of...
I believe that
But because
voting-
society, consists of women and men. Like if we are going to have a president or something,
yes,
we need the vote of a woman.
well, again, if you have one, it's not gonna. In Islamic world,
Yeah.
this is
No.
not the
It's
case.
not the situation.
Yes, it's not the determining case. Not even the votes of men would count, because
Yeah.
it's there. Love it or leave it. You don't have a
understand.
choice. But in the so-called democratic countries, in the Muslim world, they do apply this, and women have the ability to vote. Islamically speaking, it is a controversial issue, because those who have a say in how the government or the state is run, those have special characteristics to them. So they have to be people of intelligence, of highly qualified, and it's called in Arabic Ahlul Hilli wal Aqd, those who have a say. So they have to usually be the generals, the scholars, the top professors, those who know what is good and what is not. But if you come to a housewife of a farmer that does not know anything about anything, and you show her a photograph of two people and say, this one looks handsomer, okay, I'm going to go for this. And she votes for him, and this may affect the voting system. This is not acceptable.
Yeah.
Those who are eligible to vote are those who are qualified to do so.
Okay, let's move to another point, the issue of inheritance. Many people tend to look at the issue of inheritance from the Islamic point of view, that women do not have the same right as men, and that their rights are being taken away from them. At least this is what some people from the outside tend to look at Islam in that way. What's the doctrine behind that, or what's the wisdom behind that?
The wisdom was not stated to us in the Holy Quran. So we can make our best to figure it out.
Try to understand why.
But you may succeed and you may not. Inheritance was given to us by Allah Azza wa Jal in the Holy Quran in 4 or 5 verses only. That covers the whole inheritance, and few hadiths also by the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And it tells us that every person in the family must take this portion, whether he's a good son or a bad one, whether she's a good daughter or a bad daughter. You do not have the right, as in the West, to say, well, my son, I'm not going to give him anything from my will, and I'm going to give all my wealth and property to my favorite dog, for example. And you deprive your kids and those who you sponsor. This is not your right. This is Allah's given right in the Holy Quran. And He said that Allah alone knows what's good for you and what's not. Therefore, if a person dies, everything is divided by inheritance in an easy way of doing so. The problem with inheritance, again, that some people think that it's only the daughter and the son. In Islam, if a person dies and he has kids, sons and daughters, the son has twice the daughter. So, for example, if he has one son and 2 daughters, then the inheritance is divided by half to the son and quarter to each daughter. And this is only with the children. But in some instances, they might be sisters and brothers, and they are sharing the same thing. In some instances, the female gets more than the male himself. For example, if the mother is alive, if the man dies and the mother is alive, she inherits the third, 1/3. And the kids may get less than that. Or she inherits 1/6, depending on the presence of her husband, who is the father, or not, and so on. So it is not something that was made up by man. It's a revelation by the Almighty, and it has to be followed in this sense. And no one has the right to say, why? This is not my decision. This was revealed 15 centuries ago, and it still exists as it is. It's the only sacred book that was revealed with the original copy still intact.
Okay,
Yes,
Mahmoud.
the wisdom behind this doctrine may be inferred through the deduction that the woman generally are not in charge of paying expenses of the household or something like that. But man, on the other hand, is in charge of and responsible to pay the expenses of all the house. So Joris said that if the woman, even if the woman is rich and well off, but her husband is, on the other hand, is very poor, when she gives anything as expenses for the house, this is considered as something lent to the husband, and he should
Repay it.
should repay it. Yes.
Is that...
Well, it's if she gives it of her own without any agreement, then it's not something that is lent. It's not something
out of her own will.
Yes. If I'm poor and I ask my wife to lend me some money, then yes. But if she, out of her own, goes and buys something for the house or buys me a gift and then sends me the bill, no, this is not the case. It's out of her own goodwill, and this is accepted as a gift.
I think this is an extravagant opinion, but it's still accepted.
Some people may
yes.
accept that type of opinion as well.
In the modern society.
Yeah, the family, they do not live together with an accountant next door, saying that, well, I paid 50 so-and-so for the groceries yesterday, you have to reimburse me for that. It is easygoing.
Yes.
If the man is in a crisis, financial crisis, he seeks assistance from his wife, then this is borrowing.
Oh.
But if she, on her own, wants to buy a dress for tonight's party, she's invited to a wedding, and the husband doesn't have the money to do so, he's not obliged to do so.
Yes.
Because he's obliged to sponsor her, to support her, to put the food on the table, to buy her decent clothes. But if she insists on
accessories,
wearing Gucci or Yves Saint Laurent for every weekend wedding she's invited to, he has to be a very big crook to support that.
Ah, okay. The issue of polygamy or number of wives, again, this is one of the issues that certain people look at it as though this is taking away the right of a wife. What's your say in that?
Are you married?
No, I'm not.
So you're not thinking?
No, not
okay.
yet.
Because I had to have my reservations before going. This is a very critical situation, but it's very easy. Polygamy has been there since God knows when. The messengers of Allah all had more than one wife. Abraham, for example, had 2 wives. The mother of Isaac, who is the father of Jacob, who is Israel, and all the prophets of messengers of the sons of Israel come of his descendant. And he had Hajar, who is the mother of Ishmael, yes. Who is the grandfather of our prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So he had 2 wives. David had lots of wives. Some narrations say that he had 1,000 wives, and he was a prophet and a king. Solomon had 100 wives.
Yes.
And some narrations say no, he had a little bit more than that. So all the messengers of Allah had more than one wife. And polygamy is a very important thing in life, because by looking at the current situation, men die, not because of women, but women are one of the causes. Men die more than women. Yeah. And you have the rate of women more than men. Men
yes, especially in wars,
associate themselves in wars, car accidents. They're careless drivers compared to women. So they say they die because of blood pressure, heart diseases,
diabetes.
Nothing happens to them. They're always, safe and never sorry. They're always intact, women. It's not Islamic to say touch wood, but this is the situation. So you end up at the end of the day with more women than men. So if you give every man a woman, you have a surplus. Mm-hmm. And by nature, women must look for admiration. Mm-hmm. So if they don't have a husband, they have to put on, wear their makeup, they have to put their perfume on, and then try to look as beautiful as possible. You are faced with a problem here.
Like Germany after the Second World War.
Germany, like yes. Iraq, like Iran, yes. Like Bosnia, like Chechnya, like everywhere you name it. We have the problem here. So to encounter this problem, Allah Azza wa Jal has given us the choice to marry more than one woman. This is not only for sexual pleasure, and this is the worst thing that a man could think of, because it is a lifetime, and it's a house that is built on marriage and love, not only on sex.
Okay, we've got a report now about polygamy, and after the report we'll continue with Sheikh Assim.
It's something that I think is very misunderstood. I come from a culture where that's not really an issue that we look at very often. To be honest, the benefits of polygamy are something that I do not understand. I think that looking at a relationship between a man and a woman, usually that relationship I think is best served when it's one-on-one, because you get to know the person as much as possible. You get to serve that person as they serve you, and to me that's the important factor about a relationship. So whether or not that can be done in a polygamous relationship is something that I just don't know.
Polygamy is something that is permissible in Islam, and in fact, in some occasions, the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ encouraged to have more than one wife. But we could always differ on why Islam prescribed polygamy, as like in certain situations where there's war, or like where a woman cannot have children, and so the man wants to have another wife so that he can have children. But in general, like, one should always treat all his wives fair and avoid any injustice or leaning towards one wife over another.
If we apply polygamy in a certain manner, it may be a solution to a lot of problems in the whole world. Like, for example, in countries where the number of women are much more than the number of men, and due to wars and certain things that are going on, we'd find out that polygamy would be a good solution for certain cases in the community.
Sheikh Assim, you just mentioned a moment ago about the wisdom or the reason behind polygamy, but is it something that's advisable? Is it something that's preferable? Is it something that's okay for everybody, kind of thing?
Islamically speaking, it depends on the situation. Allah Azza wa Jal has allowed us to have a second or more wife, providing that we are fair. So if you cannot be fair, then it is forbidden for you to marry another wife. And this fairness is interpreted in the sense of supporting both families equally and spending enough time with both on equal basis. So you may not spend 3 nights with this one because you love her, you like her, and 1 night with the other one. You have to give 3 nights to 3 nights. You have to give them a proper shelter. You have to support them equally. So if you buy this one a dress, you have to buy the other one a dress. If you give this one pocket money so-and-so, you have to give the other one as much. But what is considered to be a necessity or need, it's a different story. For example, if you take this one to the hospital and you pay $1,000 for her operation,
you don't necessarily have to go around and pay $1,000 to the other one.
Unless you break her legs, then
that's a different situation. Do you have to have consent of your first wife to marry a second one?
Then he would never ever marry a second one. No, the consent is not a prerequisite, and it's not even a condition. But, and I don't recommend that you take her consent unless you are determined to do so. A lot of the brothers make the mistake of, talking to their wives, saying, I'm going to get married soon. Soon I'm going to look for a gorgeous woman and get married to. She has to be blonde, she has to be blue-eyed, she has to be better than you, well-educated, more than you. And he does not have the intention to do so. He's just teasing her. This is forbidden. This is completely out of the question. It's like slaughtering a sheep with a dull knife.
Slowly.
It's not going to work, because he's going to inflict so much pain on the wife. If you want to get married, get all your things together, weigh the pros and cons, pray istikhara and then go ahead with it. Tell her ahead of time, a day or two or so, that my mind is done, my mind is made, I have to make this, and go ahead with it. But to prepare her without having anything concrete is torture, and you may not do this. And again, what is the decision behind your marriage? Marriage is not an easy ride.
Yeah.
It's nothing that you do and, well, it's I don't want to drink cola, I want to drink another orange juice or whatever. It's fun, No, it's not. It's a responsibility. Allah Azza wa Jal, as the Prophet tells us, that if a person has two wives and he prefers one over the other, financially or whatever, he will come on the Day of Judgment with side of his face, almost melting or leaning to the other side. And people would know that this guy has two wives and he's not fair to them. So it's a serious issue.
Okay, Mahmoud.
Actually, I have heard. I'm sorry for hearing repeatedly the attacks on Islam as a pretext that Islam is belittling the position of the woman. I have something which is admirable to mention to you, that once I read in the Holy Quran in the chapter of divorce, الطلاق, بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم, فإن أرضعن لكم فأتوهن أجورهن. And it was a very fantastic piece of information that the exegesis or explanation of this verse is as follows. If the women feed your babies...
Breastfeed, that is.
Yes, breastfeed your babies, give them a fee for that.
Though they are their children.
Yes, yes.
Yet it's not...
Yes. Even if they are their children. Yes.
Well, this is in the case of divorce. Once the divorce takes place and the mother or the divorcee is separated from her husband, but she is still caring for her child, she has to receive something from the husband who divorced her because of this breast feeding. And again, I'd like to comment on why the West looks so down at polygamy. In so many countries, it's forbidden to have two wives. In the States and in Europe, China, you have only one wife registered in a civil court or as a civil marriage. The other one is not registered. So, and sometimes they can sue you because of that.
Yes, yeah.
It's very awkward, because if I have 10 girlfriends that I'm living with at the same time, this is acceptable. But to have this as legal marriage with legal kids and everybody knows about it, it's not in the hiding, this is forbidden. Islam tells you, no, you have the power to do this, you have the urge and need to do this. Your wife can be sick, can be ill, can be occupied with caring for her parents, can be working, and you have the need for that, you may get married again rather than go and cheat on your wife. So polygamy is the answer to all the West's problems. And I know lots of people who are living in the West with their black book or blue book with all the names and numbers of whatever he is in that state or that city. He calls an ex-friend, an ex-associate, and he spends a night, a one-nighter or so on. In Islam, this is completely unacceptable. You want to have a relationship, have it within the constitution of or the institution of marriage. This is, everyone knows about it. It's open to all.
I think that's the difference between us and the Western society. They won't be delivered from responsibility. Like they have dozens of girlfriends. That's a great chance for them. But if two more wives, that's going to be a lot of responsible for the men.
And that is why marriage is about responsibility.
They want to be away from the legal bond.
And another point is the issue of us projecting ourselves, us as Muslims, projecting the image that sometimes this is projected the image that women are, as I mentioned before, subordinate level, or they're not taking their rights or whatever. Are we in a sense to blame at all for something like that? That foreigners or Westerners or whatever look at us, that see examples let's say they're minority examples, they're small examples, that women are not having the rights. So should we play a role in showing the true way, or?
I think that we should enlighten people of the situation and tell them what Islam really is. Now, they have a lot of critique about us. They don't give us a chance to say what we think about them. For example, if you open any satellite channel, news channel from the West, you'll find out that the man is properly dressed from neck to toe, while the woman is exposed. The more she exposes herself, wearing a very mini skirt, showing her cleavage, and exposing herself, then she is more famous than the other. What happens if the thing was reversed? What happens if the man comes with a nice T-shirt or a short, and the woman comes in veil? They will ban this channel. Why? Because this is not what they want. They want women to be exposed. And that is why in commercials, they always present women as nude as possible. And the sexier they are, the better the commercial is. But you rarely see men coming in commercials, exposing their bodies. Why is that? Because all the temptation lies in a woman's body. So Islam respects women. Islam cares for women, while the West does not.
But we should project the way that women's role really is, or the rights that women have.
Definitely.
I'd like to thank you, of course, Sheikh Assim Al-Hakeem, for joining us on Youth Talk. It's a pleasure always having you with us. And, of course, I would like to thank my three participants, Osama, Mahmoud and Muhammad. Thank you all for joining us. That's it for this episode of Youth Talk. Until next time, Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu.
La 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 la